Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Inside Blue 360. I am Jerry Kane. I'm here with my co-host, Michele Durante.
That's right. Sergeant Jerry and Detective Michele are here for another round of Inside Blue 360. What are we going to talk about today, Jerry?
So we're going to have two little bit intense and sad stories, and we're going to finish with a tribute to a really great man. But I'm going to start with a great man, actually. We're going to talk about police officer Robert Bolden. Mm-hmm. Robert Bolden was a cop in the 75th Precinct, East New York, Brooklyn. And on the night of January 22nd, 1971, he was off duty in a bar not too far from the current 84th Precinct in downtown Brooklyn. And the place looked like it was going to get stuck up. The bartender didn't like the look of some of the guys there. Mm-hmm. Bolden approached one, and a shootout ensued, and he was killed in the line of duty. And to this day, the case is not solved. Wow.
How old was he when he died?
I don't know how old he was. I do know that he was a U.S. Navy veteran, and he's got a grandson who's actually a detective now in the 7-8 squad. Mm-hmm. His grandson, John Bolden, is on the job and is a squad detective. Bolden's case was never, ever dropped. There was a legendary detective from the Major Case Squad named Tom Nerney, who passed about a year or two ago. And even in retirement, Tom would work this case. He would be running down leads. People would be calling him with information and tips. The Major Case Squad still has it as an open case. Mm-hmm. And last year, a couple of the unions got together, the PBA, the DEA, the SBA, a couple of other people of goodwill, and they culled together $111,500. It's the largest reward standing for the murder of a New York City police officer. And there there's probably somebody out there. There's certainly somebody out there that knows who did it.
Oh, yeah.
Even if the perpetrator is alive or dead, to close this case would be something awesome. And we're going to put the wanted poster up on our website for people to see, InsideBlue360.com. And we want people to take a look at the poster.
Sure.
Share the poster. Put it on your Facebook page. Tweet it out. Insta it. Do whatever.
Talk about it. Talk about your neighbors that have lived there around that area for a while. If there's anybody any store owners, somebody like that, I remember this guy. Something will pop up.
Right. Like if your grandparent had a store on that block, they might remember these guys came in and remember a car or something, anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean just because it's old doesn't mean the case can't be solved.
That's
the case
right.
can be solved. And justice could be done, and the Bolden family, which
that's right, yeah,
can
get some closure and stuff, right? Absolutely, that's what they deserve, some closure.
I was telling our producer Pam before we rolled tape that when Tom Nerney passed, everybody said at Tom's wake that the first thing he did when he got to heaven was go find Robert Bolden and ask him, "Hey, who killed you?" Because it was something that. Tom, every day, the first thing he thought about when he woke up and the last thing he thought about before he went to sleep was Robert Bolden.
Right. And remember, too, this is before there was Ring cameras and cameras on the light poles and everything. People with their cell phones. This is way before that. So there's absolutely no chance that you're going to get anything on video. So anybody who has any memory of it, or just can remember anybody on the job, they want to talk about it, something like that, you might jar some memory of somebody that, maybe was an unsavory character in that time. Maybe the bartender. What about the bartender? Is he still around?
I don't know if the bartender's still around.
Those guys know everything. They're like prostitutes. You never lock them up. They give you all the information you need.
I was once a bartender.
Oh, I thought you said I was a prostitute. I was going to say, you know what? I can see that. That's good for you. And you made a wise career choice in becoming a sergeant.
So just please, everybody, look at the website. Look at the picture.
Yep.
If you know you might have heard a family story on either side of the case. You might have had a relative who was a witness. You might have had a relative who could have been an actor in it. Either way, do the right thing. The late, great Mike Sheen used to say, do the right thing and make the call. It's 1-800-577-TIPS. It's a $111,500 reward. It's a lot of money.
Yep.
And it would just be doing the right thing and putting someone in jail.
Yep. Mike Sheen. I love that guy.
So Michelle, I get you're a Long Islander. If you want to start,
Absolutely, I'm admitting it.
The next
I'm
thing
admitting
we're
it.
going to talk about is
One of my neighbors.
you live out there, really?
I live out on Long Island, with one of these wonderful pieces of we like to call them white trash out there.
Yeah, this guy is white trash.
Oh
that's
yeah.
for sure.
Let's talk about him. I can't wait.
So there's a young boy named Thomas Valva who is just 8 years old, who is tortured. He was smacked around, locked in a freezing garage overnight on a night when it was 19 degrees out, and he was found dead the next day. The father called 911 and said, my son fell in the garage. The cops roll there because it's a report of a kid injured. The father's doing CPR. It turns out that the father, who had withheld food from the kid and was abusing the kid regularly, he had warmed the body in a bathtub. He was so the reason we're talking about this story is because the perpetrator in this case is a New York City police officer, the father, 15-year veteran in transit in Queens. But he wasn't a detective, and he didn't know about how a body temperature works. He knew the kid was cold to the touch, and so he put the kid in a warm bathtub to warm the kid up. But the kid was dead. There was no pulse.
Right.
So the core does not warm up.
No.
All it did was warm the skin. The body temperature of the kid was 78 degrees.
Unbelievable.
When they brought the kid to the hospital. And, the cops knew the kid was dead, but they didn't, it was a child. So they threw the kid into an ambulance
Right.
and, drove 100 miles an hour to the emergency room. I asked my wife, who's a nurse, when this news came out, I go, 78 degrees, any chance? And my wife said to me, it's not conducive to life.
Yes.
And I'm like, so this kid had died in the middle of the night, all alone,
Right.
terrified, beaten by his father.
Mm-hmm. Evidently, too, I believe he was autistic, which makes it, the thing of it is that, I babysit. I babysit a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, my niece and my nephew, and there's times that it could get very difficult out there, like when the baby's teething and stuff. But when you're born, when you have a child that's autistic, that you have to know that they're going to be helpless pretty much for the rest of their lives. You have to take a different stance. Like, you can't say, like, I can tell my niece, don't touch the stove because it's hot. I can't tell her to stop crying if she's hurt. I can make her feel better. Where this guy, you have a young kid who doesn't understand any of that, has no social skills. And so that's the kind of father. And the mother, evidently, I know, was begging for custody. He's divorced. And I think the girlfriend's living with him at the time. So the mother begged for custody. She actually made police reports. So I don't know. I know I came on the job in 1989. You never told the husband, go take a walk around the block and cool off. That era ended many, many years ago. So, I mean, they had a babysitter that said she heard the verbal abuse, and I mean, you can make report. Thank God my niece's kids can't talk. No, I'm only kidding, Katie. I don't verbally, but you know what I'm saying? Like, these are young kids, and it's your own child, and he's already mentally incapacitated to some degree.
So I was wondering why this guy, who apparently didn't want these kids, or he didn't want to. Let me walk that back. Maybe in some perverted way he wanted the kids, but he certainly didn't want to take care of his kids and love them and nourish them and cherish them. Why would he fight in court? Because he fought in court with his ex-wife for custody, and it occurred to me, he wanted the child support money.
Right.
I think child support is 17% for the first child. If it's 3 kids, and so it's probably about 30%. The ex-wife's a correctional officer. She's probably making over $100,000 a year with overtime.
Yeah.
So he's getting $30,000 net. He's depriving her of the kids, so he's giving her the real screwing. And of course, the extra money allows him to, like, I understand that it was described in the paper that they tried to like show that Brady Bunch like perfect
Oh,
family
yeah,
type
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Their house was perfect, their cars were perfect, their pool was perfect. It's hard to have a perfect life without money. So to have $30,000 coming in after
Right.
taxes is can help you do that. Really, really horrible situation. They've taken the 2 surviving boys out of the house, and I think they've been returned to the mother. The girlfriend had 2 or 3 girls, I think. I think she had girls and he had boys, something like that. They've taken those kids, and those kids are now in Child Protective Services, like some kind of
Right.
foster home.
Right.
I don't know if the father is known and if he's
Right,
petitioning
right.
for custody or not. But it's a freaking nightmare. And that a cop who's supposed to help people could do this to a
yeah.
freaking child. He was a big bodybuilder guy.
He's probably on the roid rage. He had a little steroids going on there.
It could be.
Hey, believe me,
It
I
could
know those
be. I've
things.
seen pictures of him. He's like jacked, super jacked.
Oh,
And,
yeah. That's that extra $30,000 a month. You go to Mexico,
Yeah.
you get those steroids.
He was probably super jacked, but like useless on the street, I'm sure.
Right. He has pretty muscles, like they like to call it. They're the bodybuilder muscles.
Yeah.
And they wear the vest. They would wear, like I had a guy I work with. He would wear his vest with a sleeveless shirt so you could see his muscles.
So I will say I do know a Suffolk County cop who shared with me that he was crying
Good deal.
when they boomed his daughter. to
The
arrest
cop
him.
or the other cop? The city cop. He was crying,
He
right?
was crying.
Good.
Yeah. One of the Suffolk County cops who was a former New York City cop told me that he was crying.
Yeah.
And went out like a freaking
Well,
child.
I mean, you gotta like. Not that I know how to kill somebody. I mean, but I think I would do a little research first. But I wouldn't use my internet. I would go to the library and use somebody else's library card, of course. But like, how would you know what I mean? Like, you got to do some research.
Well, I think probably they was so used to abusing this kid.
Yeah,
They
I
never
mean-
thought the kid would die. Now the kid died on him, and they had to do
Yeah.
something about it, right? And so they were like, at the end, just trying to come up with something, right?
Instead of just calling the hospital and, calling an ambulance. I mean, at that point, the kid is dead. It's
And the kicker is because they're going to jail. These two.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Apparently, they had surveillance cameras with audio all throughout their house.
Oh yeah, I saw that too. Yeah,
And the cops got it.
that's amazing.
The cops got it. Yeah, they tried to delete it or something like that, but of course it was still on the hard drive.
Oh, that's great.
And it's already been recovered. Yeah. Yeah.
What a piece of garbage.
Thank God criminals are idiots, and thank God criminal cops are idiots too, because
Yeah.
this guy is a stain on the badge.
I'll be honest, I worked with a guy that was accused of killing his wife, girlfriend, actually on the Bronx River Parkway, like in like the 90s, right? And Janine Piero was Judge Janine. She was the ADA or the DA in Westchester. She didn't play around. And this guy used to show up every day in a suit. I worked in narcotics in the Bronx. He'd show up in a suit, right? And his job was to challenge anybody that came into the non-NYPD building, all right? So he was always dressed up in a suit, and he goes, I got the first half. I'll take the first half, and I would say cover the second half. And he'd disappear. And later on, we found out that he had this fight with his girlfriend on the Bronx River Parkway, and he hacked her arm so much that she lost,
Jeez.
right? We worked with this nut. And he always I got to go pick up my suits from the dry cleaner. I was like, you know what? He's got a lot of dry cleaning, that guy, for somebody who's sitting and answering the phones. So there's always these lunatics that get through the system.
So in defense of the NYPD,
Right. It's not their fault.
there's 35,000
Yeah,
cops, and it's you can't be perfect in recruiting people. People are clever in secreting their true intentions. If they've never been in trouble before,
That's
and
right.
nothing ever happened in school or family, then no neighbors ever saw anything. So how's the NYPD gonna
Exactly.
figure it out? And then they come on, and then the clever ones figure out how to skate through, but then eventually, hopefully, we catch them before they kill someone.
Right,
And it
and-
would have
yeah.
been nice if we had weeded this guy out
Yeah.
before he killed someone. He's weeded out now, that's for sure.
Well-
He's going to go to Attica for the rest of his life, and he better really start hitting the pipe, not the fake pipe, because he's going to have to be jacked up to defend himself there.
Right. Some of these guys too, they don't have much of an identity before they come on the job, so they gain that pack mentality. I'm going to do this. This becomes my whole life, and like I can do this now. they carry it above a level that it's not what normal police officers do. We just go home. They're always,
I still do speed, by the way.
That's okay.
I want to admit that.
I did jump the turnstile because my Metro card didn't work. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say complain to Andy Byford, but he's
let me tell you something. I'm pretty upset that Andy left because I think he was doing a heck of a job on the subway system.
He was doing a very good job.
He was doing a great job. All the egos are getting in the way.
They are.
Reminds me of an era a long time ago when it was Giuliani and what's his name, Bill Bratton.
Yes. They didn't get along too well.
The battle of the wits.
And they forced Bratton out.
Yes.
What are you going to do?
You know what? Yeah, stuff rolls downhill. Sorry.
So for our listeners who aren't steeped in NYPD history, we kind of went off on a tangent there. Bill Bratton was the police commissioner in '93. Changed the whole culture of the NYPD, but was only around a year and a half because he was taking credit. Mayor Giuliani wanted to take credit for re-election purposes. Giuliani ultimately was the boss, and he forced him out.
Bratton's a cool guy too because he had what do you call it? He worked in L.A. He was the L.A. police commissioner.
Yep.
He came back to the NYPD.
Yep.
You know what I liked the best about him, though? He was He was in charge of transit, and he pulled that. Nobody wanted to be in transit because it was like.
So
he pulled that together, and he, real great guy.
So I remember when he was the chief of transit before he became police commissioner, and transit cops were looked down on.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if I showed up at a scene and there were transit cops there, I would just assume that I was going to run the show because I was a street cop. And then in Bratton's short time as a transit chief, they were telling me what to do.
Yeah.
They had better uniforms, better equipment,
they had the
better training.
Yeah, the sweaters, those cool sweaters.
And they had Glocks before
and
we
they
had
had Glocks.
Yep.
They were cool, man. They were like, and everybody wanted to be transit.
Everybody wanted to be a transit
You know
cop.
what? And actually now transit, I'm going to be honest with you, guys that come on the job now, transit is the job to have, they say.
It's not a bad place.
No, I always wanted housing. I always loved housing because that's cool stuff.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Not too many people want to be housing cops.
I loved housing.
Just saying. Yeah, I guess you didn't want to be on the air. That's an inside joke for our
inside joke. That's right. I love the housing cops. There was one car, like two. There was four of them on patrol in the Bronx half the time, and people never realized that those housing cops, they got to go from like Edenwald all the way to like the other end of the Bronx. They had a way of dealing with people. That's not a very easy environment. The way those housing projects were constructed, it does not make it very conducive to make people feel welcome that have to live there.
No.
And they had a way of dealing with, that's why it's, there's, for listeners that aren't big fans of the NYPD, we have some good things going on, believe it or not.
There are. I think there's a lot of great work being done by the police officers out there, and I guess that's what we want to talk about.
Right, and it makes you very resilient. You can do anything. Anything at all, because they call us for everything.
You know what? That is 100% true. I've been called to fix leaky faucets. Yep. I've done medical care for people. I've done body work and mechanical work on cars. And, you name it, cops get called to do it. Yeah.
Chased a squirrel out of an apartment.
Did you?
Well, we called DSU for that. I was going to touch it. And Jerry, did you ever have to we have to sit with a family that just passed away? Maybe they're going out of the picture. Did you ever do that thing that those Catholics do?
I have. I've made notifications. I've been involved in some intense things. I've given last rites to
Nice. You're like a priest.
Well, you know what?
Without the baggage.
There was no priest available.
Yep.
It was a police officer who I knew was a good Catholic, a very good Catholic, a much better Catholic than me. And he was on a table in Bellevue Hospital, and it was apparent that he wasn't going to make it.
Oh, what a shame.
And I put my hand on him, and I did a Hail Mary and an Our Father, and I hoped it counted for something.
It counts. Yeah. It counts. At that point, it counts.
By the time the chaplain showed up, the police department rushed the chaplain, lights and sirens to the hospital. He had already passed, and the chaplain then went and did something also,
right,
like the official last rites, I guess. But I wasn't going to let him pass without a prayer.
No, of course not. Of course not.
And I hope that God counted my prayer. 'Cause
I'm sure he did.
I'm a big sinner.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
was a big sinner, hon.
Right.
If you're watching.
Right. We try to make amends to everybody.
But yeah, it's yeah. I mean, the things that you do as a cop. I gave that cop CPR that night. Started out the night looking for the perps at gunpoint. I was ready to be a sharpshooter and a combat. In combat, you never know. You never know. 1 minute to the next. So, our last thing we're going to talk about tonight.
Right.
When this airs, whenever it airs today, when we're filming it, right now as we speak, they're having a funeral for a legendary first grade detective, retired from the job many years ago, by the name of Sonny Grasso.
Yep.
So, Sonny, you're an old narco ranger. They must have talked about Sonny Grasso.
We talked about Sonny, but he also, too, he was depicted in the French Connection. That's the real deal. That's what most people would identify. That's how they know him, but great guy, great detective.
Yeah, Sonny Grasso was already a great detective when him and his partner kind of stumbled accidentally on this mafia couple, and it became, the investigation just grew and grew and grew into the French Connection case. And at the time, they didn't realize that heroin was coming in from Marseille, France. And they wrote a book, and of course, they made an Oscar Academy Award-winning movie.
Was it Gene Hackman?
Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider, I think. It was Gene Hackman or Roy Scheider?
I believe so, yeah.
And so Sonny, not only the French Connection narcotics case, there's a very infamous line-of-duty death in New York City of a patrolman by the name of Phil Cardillo. Never closed, never had an arrest made. It was the height of the racial tensions in New York City. There was a race riot on the street when Cardillo was killed. The NYPD actually ordered all white cops off the street, which was insane.
I believe Ben Ward was the sergeant during that.
Yeah, Ben Ward was in a leadership position there.
Yep.
The case didn't get investigated. They had rounded up 20 suspects. Charles Rangel made a deal that he would bring the suspects in, no cuffs, just walk them into the 2-8 precinct later on that night. Of course, no one ever showed up, so he didn't have those people to interview. Sonny Grasso was at the scene, was on the street, responding to the shooting, and responding to the shooting, and was at the riot, and also, and
well, to make things clear, this with Phil Cardillo, there was a lot of racial tension. There was a lot of there was the whole mosque incident.
That was in the mosque where he got killed.
And so at the time, Ben Ward, who I believe was community affairs, the deputy commissioner or something, he's a male black, and so he was suited to become part of the voice of this. They thought it would be better to portray, to identify with the black community. And so they had Ben Ward, and they had what's his name, Charlie Rangel,
who's the congressman.
And and again, back in the day, there was all these race riots, but the NYPD had the foresight to say, you know what, we need people who can identify with the community, and in a way that they understand it. Not we don't. We're not. A lot of us aren't Muslim or whatever, and so that was a situation that was handled off the cuff, without knowing what we know now. Eventually, maybe that's what led to Ben Ward becoming police commissioner. I don't know, but at the time, the we didn't know what we know now, so it was a much different time. Everything was bad. It was very black and white, and when I say it, I mean it. It was right down the line, black and white.
So for our listeners who don't know anything about this history, what happened was, and it was very charged racial times in the city. Someone went to a payphone, called 911. I said there's a police officer shot inside the Harlem Mosque. The Mosque number 7, I think it was actually
Mosque
called.
number 7, the Nation of Islam.
And so the cops raced there because there's a report of a cop shot.
Right.
And there was no cop shot, so the cops rush in. A group of men close the doors behind them. A big Donnybrook breaks out between these 4 cops and these 12 men. And a man takes Phil Cardillo's gun from him as they're beating him and shoots him dead with his own gun. because of the riot. Those men all fled into the basement.
Right.
They were apprehended. I just remembered, right, with a little help from our producer, that Farrakhan, Louis Farrakhan was the imam of that mosque.
And just to clear it up too, it's not every mosque is like that. At the
No.
time, this was mosque number 7. It was the Nation of Islam.
Right.
It was a very radical sect in those days.
Right, everybody knows Farrakhan now. He's still out of his mind, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe he's tempered down a little bit, but just so everybody is really, really aware that it was a very, very, volatile time.
So, Sonny Grasso, let's circle back to Sonny because we want to give him his tribute. Later on, the case was not closed. There was no arrest. And he investigated. He put his own money into it.
Yep.
He actually had Hollywood people that he knew from the French Connection.
That's right, yeah.
Build a model of the mosque so that they could, examine a crime scene and try to figure out who moved what where. He spent hours and hours and hours and weeks and weeks and weeks and months investigating it. Unfortunately, he never, ever, ever got a chance to close the case with an arrest.
Right.
There was a guy that they charged, or that they wanted to charge. His name was Louis 17X Dupree.
Yep.
Louis Dupree, I believe, got charged with like a first grade whatever in South Carolina, North Carolina is like an A1 felony here in New York State.
Right.
So he got charged by another law enforcement agency, and he's going to die in jail. But he's not going to die in jail for killing Phil Cardell.
No.
So I had a chance to meet Sonny Grasso years later. We just talked about giving last rites. He also produced a show called Top Cops, which was all these positive stories about police officers. And every year in May, they would do an episode that would coincide with Police Memorial Day. Mm-hmm. It was an hour-long show. They would do 4 episodes that night. And they did a story about this officer, Tony Dwyer, who I was with when he got killed in the line of duty. I got to go up there and make sure that they got the story right. It's interesting to see how Hollywood does this.
Right.
This was a thing that kind of stretched out over maybe 2 hours.
Right.
And they condensed it down to 18 minutes. But literally a cast of like a few hundred people behind the scenes on the other side of the camera,
right.
Working hard so a few actors can portray to the American public how heroic this officer was. It was pretty amazing to see. And Sonny Grasso was the executive producer, and he demanded to the director and all the writers and everybody there that they must listen to the cops. So it was like a big, I'm like a freaking sector car cop, a radio car cop in Midtown South, and I'm up in Toronto, and they got the headset on, I got a headset, and after every scene that they shoot, they're running over to make sure that it was okay with me.
Yeah.
It met my standards.
Yeah.
And I wasn't anybody important at all.
Right.
And but Sonny Grasso wanted to make sure that the cops were there, agreed with the way it was shot. They did 4 stories that night. They did Tony Dwyer's story. They did the story of a New Jersey State trooper that got killed in a line of duty. They had a trooper there plus the trooper's family. They did a story about 3 Oklahoma Highway Patrolmen that were killed. They had the surviving member of it was 4 guys together. It was after some jailbreak guys. They had that guy in. And they had a story of a New York State trooper killed in a line of duty in a narcotics raid down on the Lower East Side. And they had an NYPD guy that was on the raid with him up there as a technical advisor to make sure, that, even though he was a different agency, they were on a team together. And everybody was listened to, and everybody everybody's voice was important. And Sonny Grasso drove that bus. If he wasn't the executive producer, then the poetic license would have run amok.
Right.
Instead, they were under orders from the guy writing the checks.
That's right, the big boss.
To make sure that everything was done correctly.
Right. So, you know what? From our family to yours, Detective Sonny Grasso, rest in peace, right? A great cop, a great guy, and, that's it.
Yep, an American hero, and New York City is a better place because he lived here.
That's right. And with that, Jerry, we're getting the signal to, wrap it up.
We're getting the
We're
wrap-up
getting that
signal?
little whirly bird thing.
All
I
right.
think this means shut up.
Well, we'll see you the next time
Yeah, it's Sergeant Jerry signing out with Detective Durante.
on Inside Blue 360.
Yeah.